fast, strong. Did I mention fast? We're on the Stinger Spiritborn now, but we are doing the Mystic Circle version of it. Now, this is not new tech, but this is the version that I'm playing, and I wanted to bring it to you guys. Before we hop into the breakdown of the build, I'm going to show you a run, what it looks like, and then I'll give you everything that you need to know to get this up and running and give this a shot, because it is definitely worth the try. That's the run. I absolutely love playing this build. Let's hop into the skills and we'll take a look at the breakdown of how this whole thing works. We're going to start at the top. We're just going to do 2 points here to make sure that we unlock our next tier. We're going to put 3 points into Vigorous. Casting a core skill increases all vigor generation by 15% for 3 seconds. We want to be able to get back to maximum vigor as fast as possible, and if we can do it immediately, that is going to be the key to doing a ton of damage with this build. We're going to do 3 points into Balance Exertion. Your core skills are going to cost 9% more. That's okay because our core skills are actually going to cost 0, and then they're going to do 15% increased damage. We're going to do 3 points into Follow Through. This is going to give our basic skills 6% increased damage, and then it's going to double on third cast. Our core skill is also going to be a basic skill. We're going to do 5 points into Stinger. Then we're going to go all the way down through Rampant Stinger. Stinger does 40% increased damage if it only hits a single enemy. Instead of echoing to the surrounding poison enemies, Stinger now draws from each to hit enemies in the primary area for an additional 10% of his base, stacking up to 5 times. Stinger actually has one of the very highest base damage in the game. It's really, really hard hitting. Moving down, we're going to go into Vortex, and we're going to go all the way up through Measured Vortex. While you have a barrier, your Vortex does 300% increased additional damage. and then it's going to knock down enemies. So that's going to be important, because they're going to pull everything in, you're going to knock them down, and if they get feared right away, which we're going to cast fear all the time, they won't go anywhere. We're going to do 1 point into Mirage so that we can unlock unrestrained power. We're going to do 3 points here, 12% increased damage while unhindered or unstoppable. Unhindered means that you can move freely through monsters, and then unstoppable means that all crowd control impairing effects are removed and prevented. We're going to do 1 point into Focal Point so that we can unlock Apex. We're going to do 3 points into Apex. We're going to deal 9% increased vulnerable damage, and we're going to double that against elites. We're going to go 1 point into Diminishment. Vulnerable enemies are going to deal 5% less damage to you. We're going to go into Ravager. Now, Ravager is what is called an incarnate skill. What incarnate skills do, they have two options here. They have a passive, which is always going to be active as long as you have this selected. Then they also have an active. So when you use that skill, then you get the active effect and additionally the passive effect. So we're going to go all the way down through Measured Ravager. While Ravager is active, your core skills are going to instantly dash to your target, and all vigor generation is going to be increased by 30%. We're going to go into Armored Hide, and we're going to put 5 points here. The reason that we're putting 5 points here is because we're dropping Gorilla as your secondary Spirit Hall choice. The more stacks that we put into this, the longer the Unstoppable is going to become from your Armored Hide. That's going to be really important, because if you're not unstoppable, the Spiritborn can become kind of squishy when you're not attacking. So if you get crowd controlled, this is your source of making sure that that does not happen. We're going to go all the way down through Reinforced Armored Hide. While Armored Hide is active, increase your block damage reduction by 5% up to 20% per nearby enemy. So we're going to have 100% block chance. That does not mean we block 100% of the incoming damage. That just means that we're going to do 20% damage reduction, but that's also going to get increased by Reinforced Armored Hide. We're also going to get maximum resolve stacks whenever we cast this. That's going to be super important, because we want to make sure that we stay as high as we possibly can. What Resolve does, Resolve increases the damage reduction by 20% while active. Taking direct damage consumes a stack. You can hold up to 8 stacks. Now that goes even higher when you add more Resolve stacks to it, but that is your base. So taking damage removes Resolve. Every time that we cast Armored Hide, we refresh back to our maximum output of Resolve. It's very important. Going down, we're going to go into Scourge, and we're going to go all the way down to Reinforce Scourge. What Scourge does, it's going to fear and slow enemies 50% for 4 seconds. It's also going to give us 1% increased damage versus crowd control enemies, but that stacks up to 50%. A 50x multiplier is huge damage. Because our cooldowns are going to come up so often, you can keep this up. As long as you keep on moving, that 50x multiplier can be up almost the entire run, depending on how your regeneration looks. If you have a great roll on your regeneration, you may not need to run Reinforced Scourge. You could always run Adaptable Scourge. This will give you some healing and some more survivability, but for now, for the resource generation, we're going to keep this in Reinforced Scourge. We're going to come down into Resilient. We're going to do 3 points here. The reason that we're doing this is because maximum life is going to be huge. Now, I just said that we're going to be taking Gorilla off as our secondary Spirit Hall choice. How are we going to be able to use Gorilla skills? Whenever we cast Armored Hide counts as a Gorilla skill. We should be able to keep this up, because this lasts for 10 seconds. That's a long time. Your Armored Hide will come off of cooldown within that 10 seconds all of the time. So we're going to be gaining 30% increased maximum life, and that actually is on the low end. So when we get to the gear, I'll talk about how you can make that go up. More life equals more barrier, equals more survivability, and a lot more damage right now. Moving down, we're going to go 3 points into Potent. Hitting an enemy with your Jaguar skills is going to increase the damage they take from you by up to 30% multiplicative. Then we're going to go into Furnace here, 3 points. Jaguar skills deal 1.5% increased critical strike damage per stack of Ferocity. We're going to get some pretty beefy stacks with this setup, and we'll go over how we're going to do that. 3 points into Ravenous. Your Centipede skills deal 7.5% increased damage. You're going to double that bonus versus healthy enemies. Healthy enemies are anything above 80% life. We're going to go 3 points into Oppressive. Your Centipede skills deal 12% increased damage to crowd control enemies, and you're going to gain 30% increased crowd control duration. Moving down, for the ultimate, we're going to be taking the Hunter, and we're going to go all the way down through Exalted Hunter. What this is going to do, this is going to overfill our ferocity by 4 stacks, and we're going to deal 100% increased damage to injured enemies. We just saw that we're going to get a 1.5% increased critical strike damage multiplier with Furnace because we have stacks of ferocity. Now we're going to get an additional 4 just from using the Hunter. This also makes us leap across the field, and it looks really cool, so it's a really fun one to choose. We're going to go 3 points into Resolution. Casting an ultimate skill is going to grant 15% increased damage to elites for 3 seconds, double that bonus if you're only fighting 1 enemy. The Hunter will come off of cooldown so quickly that this should be up almost all of the time. We're going to go 3 points in Spiritual Attunement. The more vigor that we have, the more damage we do, so getting more vigor is going to be super key to this. We're going to go 3 points into Supremacy. Any enemy you kill while an ultimate skill is active grants you a stack of Supremacy, increasing your damage by 3%, and that's going to go up to 30%. When an ultimate skill ends, you're going to gain 5 stacks of Supremacy. You're going to begin to lose one of those stacks every second. You're going to get damage while the ultimate is active as long as you're killing monsters, and then when it ends, you have additional damage that's going to continue, and then lose that damage once every second. The final point, we're going to go into Prodigy's Tempo. What this is going to do, it's twofold. Every 3rd consecutive cast of the same basic skill, all purchase skills ranks are going to be increased by 2. Every time that we cast the same basic skill 3 times, all of the skills that we have purchased are going to gain 2 ranks. That is huge. It's like running a mini Shaco. Every 3rd consecutive cast of the same core skill or potency skill reduces all of your skills' active cooldowns by 10%. That's going to be increased by 2% for each of the ranks of those skills. This is where all of the cooldown comes up, and if you don't run this with this build and this setup, you do so much less damage. You are way less tanky because all of your skills do not come off of cooldown. When we get to the gameplay loop at the very end of this video, I'll show you exactly how fast the cooldowns are. It is really, really awesome to see. I've messed around with a couple of the other key passives, and this one is definitely the way to go. Okay, we're going to hop into the Paragon board. We're going to take a look. Now, when you're doing Paragon boards this season, if you're following a planner, now my planner will be in the description of this video. Make sure you use a planner when you're following along. You don't have to pause the video. You can zoom in, zoom out. If you've never looked at a planner before, this is what a planner looks like if you're going to be following along on the Paragon board. You can move around the entire thing. You can see the whole thing. You can even zoom in and zoom out. You can hover over all of them. Make sure that you click that link, go into the planner description because it is very, very beneficial. It has everything that you're going to need. If you're following along with a planner, make sure that you're not following along on a planner that has a 300 Paragon board and then you're just following every single point. If you do that, you will not be able to unlock all of the glyphs and all of the legendary nodes. When you build your board, you're going to run straight to each glyph and then to each legendary node. Don't worry about your pathing. Don't worry about all of the little details along the edges. Just get every single one unlocked, and then you can work on refinement as you get more Paragon points. It is a marathon, not a sprint. In the starter board, we're going to be running Colossal. Now, we won't be doing any gorilla damage, so you don't need to worry about stacking any of your strength. We're running this because you're going to deal 2% increased damage per stack of Resolve. We have currently a ton of stacks of Resolve, and I haven't even masterworked very well. That is going to be a huge multiplicative increase number. Now, all of the glyphs this season, they gain a legendary bonus when they hit level 46. The legendary bonus is always going to be multiplicative. For this one, we're going to deal increased damage to close enemies. Moving up, we're going to be going into Viscous Shield. You deal 1% increased damage for 3% of your maximum life as barrier. Now, this is actually broken right now. This scales up pretty much infinitely as high as you can get it to go. It's not supposed to do that. It's supposed to be capping out at 33%. We are taking advantage of it this season. It will get changed in the future, so as you're playing your Spiritborns, just make sure that you know that this will not remain the same. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Spirit. This is going to give you increased critical strike damage and quite a lot of it. That's going to get multiplied, which is how we have so much critical strike damage on the Spiritborns. This also does critical strikes increase the damage an enemy takes from you by up to 15%. It is going to give us a multiplicative damage to elites as well. Moving up, we're going to be going into the sapping board. When you cast 3 Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, Centipede skills of the same spirit in a row, restore 15% of your vigor, and you're going to deal 30% increased multiplicative damage. Inside of that board, we're going to be running Hubris. Now, it says Thorns damage. We are not doing any Thorns damage. What we are using this for, though, is that magic node increase. What we are using this for is that 327% bonus to all magic nodes within range. This is giving us additional maximum resources. The maximum resources with the Kepaleka is multiplied by a ton of damage. So even a little bit of maximum resource turns into a lot of damage. So that's why we're running Hubris here. We're also going to get increased multiplicative damage to vulnerable enemies. Moving over, we're going to be going into the Convergence board. You deal bonus damage equal to 20% of your 2 highest bonus damage types combined, up to 30% total. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Fester. Fester is going to give us Centipede skill damage, and then it's also going to give us a 15% increased multiplicative damage to crowd control enemies, and then poison damage is going to be a multiplicative number also from the legendary power. So for the final board, and because I'm doing a build right now currently with no mythic uniques, that will change. I have the mythics, I'm doing it without it so you guys can see it. Right now, in order for you to be able to unlock the final maximum life, you're going to have to be able to either move some points around in the Paragon board and sacrifice a little bit of damage, or you can run an incense. The incense is going to be your Chorus of War. So that's going to give us 40% all stats. So when we pop that and we go back into the Paragon board, now we have these just unlocked. But I'm also pretty far into my Paragon levels. So as you guys build your Paragon boards, if you need to take things out of damage points, so let's say that you come over here into your Spirit board. If you need to take points out of Dexterity to put them into Intelligence somewhere to unlock a node to make sure that your character runs correctly, you can do that. Right now, I'm just sitting at enough that when I run a Chorus of War, I have enough to unlock these. The final board that we're going to be running is Revealing. 30% chance to knock down enemies. We're going to deal 30% increased multiplicative damage to crowd control enemies. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Ritual. This is going to give us Mystic Circle potency. While standing in a Mystic Circle, we're going to deal 10% increased damage, and we're also going to take 10% reduced damage. Our damage is also going to be increased multiplicatively using this glyph. Let's hop into the gear. Now, like I said, I am not running any mythics for this build. If you need to, the Shroud of False Death is the one that you would want to be substituting in. In the planner, all you have to do is just put this on, and then all of the other aspects and stuff are all in the correct place that we're going to make this build run even with or without it. You just swap it on and then swap it out. That will be it. If you do use the Shroud of False Death, the Paragon board will be a little bit different because you're going to get all of that all stats. So mess around with it. Nothing is static. They're just guides. Figure out what is going to be best for your character as you go. Starting with the helmet, we're going to be running Apprehension. For this aspect, the most important part of it, we're going to deal 35% increased multiplicative damage to feared enemies. As you saw, Scourge is going to fear, and that will come off cooldown a lot, so we're going to get that 35x all the time. For the affixes, we're going to be running Dexterity, Maximum Life, and then Maximum Resources. For the tempers, we're going to be running Barrier Generation, and then Maximum Stacks of Resolve. This is important. You want to get your triple masterworking into that resolve, but that's going to be in the planner, so make sure you follow along for exactly where to put all your masterworking skills in. When you're building this character, and I know that building characters seems like it takes a long time, the very first thing that you want to look for is going to be armor with maximum life on everything. The reason that you're running maximum life on everything is because that's going to be survivability, increased damage. That is going to be key. I don't have double or triple greater affixes on all of my gear. I don't have the best gear in the game, but I have gear that works and gear that allows me to run very quickly and do the content that I want to be doing. For the chest piece, we're going to be running Binding Morass. This is going to give us 20% increased damage to slowed enemies. For the affixes, we're going to be running Dexterity, Max Life, and you can figure this out and feel it out for yourself. You can either run armor or you can run ranks to defensive skills. For the tempers, we're going to be running Vortex Size, and then we're going to be running maximum stacks of Resolve. We're running Vortex Size on this because I also have a piece of gear that is brick that I'm using. But what you want to look for is you want to look for your barrier bonus and make sure that's at least 123%. I am way over, so I don't actually need the barrier bonus on this. So I'm running Vortex Size, and that's a lot of quality of life. Vortex is going to pull everything towards you. The bigger it is, the more enemies get pulled to you. For the gloves, we're going to be running Moonrise. Damaging an enemy with a basic skill is going to grant you 4% increased attack speed. That's going to stack up to 5 times. When you get 5 stacks, you're going to enter a Vampiric Blood Rage. That's going to give you 100% increased basic skill damage and then movement speed on top of that. For the affixes, we're going to be running Dexterity, Max Life, and then this is really, really important. 15% chance to restore primary resources. If you can find a GA here, that would be perfect, but it actually is not necessary because of all of the regeneration that we have. This is going to be how you can replace the Ring of Midnight Sun. If you don't have this, the Ring of Midnight Sun is going to be the option for you. You're just going to have to swap Moonrise for your Plains Power. So I have all of these here set up so that all you have to do is swap 1 or 2 things around to make this work depending on your gear. For the tempers here, we're going to be running Barrier Generation, which is correct. We don't need the Masterworking crits in it. The mobility damage is actually bricked, so we don't want that. Follow along the planner. It's going to have exactly what you want, but we want Mystic Circle Potency. That's going to be the ideal temper for your gloves. For the pants, we're going to be running Interdiction. You're going to get up to 15% increased block chance per stack of Resolve. Now, normally block caps out at 100%, but for some reason, the block is just scaling up and up and up and up, no matter how much you have. So the more stacks of Resolve we have, the more block chance we have, even though it says it's capped at 100. That's giving us more damage and more damage reduction. For the affixes, we're going to be running Dexterity, Max Life, Basic Skill ranks, and then for the tempers, we're going to be running Barrier Generation and then Resilient. This is where we add our Resilient in. This is where we get more maximum life. This is also where you want to put your Masterworking crits into. As you can see, I have a lot of work to do. That is what I love about this season, is that I have so much to do still, and we still have months to go. Very excited about it. For the boots, we're going to be running Duelist. This is going to give you maximum ferocity is increased by 5. For the affixes, we're going to be running Max Life, Armor, Movement Speed. Then for your tempers, we're going to be running Barrier Generation and Movement Speed as well. For the staff, we are going to be running the Mythic Unique, the Rod of Kepaleka. Not actually a Mythic Unique, but at the rate that it is and how strong it is, it should be a Mythic Unique. The way this works, and with just more of the interactions with the Spiritborn that aren't quite working as they're supposed to be working, you actually only need to have 140 Vigor in order to make the Banishlord's Talisman proc all the time. So I'm just sitting right over that mark. If you're not there, the most important affix on this is going to be your maximum resources. Then you can get your core skills hit twice after that. If not, put it into core skills hit twice. But what your Rod of Kepaleka does and why this is so strong. Your core skills are now additionally basic skills and are free to cast. They're going to deal reduced damage based on their vigor cost. When at maximum vigor, your core skills consume all vigor and then return to full damage. They're going to cast at their largest size, and they're going to become a guaranteed critical strike with up to 3% increased critical strike damage per point of vigor spent. That's why making sure that you have as much vigor as you possibly can is incredibly important. It's going to be a huge increase to your damage. That is a lot of words. What that means is that every time that we get our vigor up to 247, it spends all of it. This is why our regeneration is so incredibly important. And that's why you need to be running your chance to restore primary resources along with all of the generation that we had from the skill tree. Super important to be running this because you have to get back to maximum vigor in order to do the most damage. We don't need to be running any increased stinger size with this build because Kepaleka makes your stinger hit the hardest that it possibly can hit and the biggest that it possibly can hit too. And you don't even need to run any critical strike chance because we guarantee a crit with this. I'm only running 14% critical strike chance, but we crit 100% of the time because of the Kepaleka. Pretty crazy. For the ring, we're going to be running Plains Power. What this is going to do, we have a 25% chance to create a Mystic Circle. That's going to last for 10 seconds, casting a Jaguar skill inside of the Mystic Circle, which we're going to be casting Jaguar as our primary. It empowers them to keep your ferocity at maximum stacks. That's huge damage increases. It's also going to increase our damage by up to 4.9 per stack. So this is going to be huge damage here, as long as we're standing inside that Mystic Circle. For the affixes here, we're going to be running max life, attack speed, critical strike damage. Then for the affixes, we're going to be running resource cost reduction or resource generation, depending on your vigor. If your vigor goes back to full, resource generation is not necessary. If it does not, make sure you put resource generation into this. And then critical strike damage for the final temper. For the other ring, we're going to be running redirected force. Gain increased critical strike damage equal to up to 70% of your block chance. Remember, block is just scaling infinitely right now. As the more stacks of resolve we get, the more block we have. So this is actually another one of those interactions that will be fixed once the Spiritborn gets all of the bugs fixed. But for now, the more block that you do, the more critical strike damage you have. Blocking is going to double that bonus, and we're going to have a 100% chance to block whenever we cast resolve. So we're going to get that double bonus for critical strike damage 100% of the time. For this ring, and for the affixes, preferably we're going to be running maximum life, attack speed, and then chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. This is super important because when you have a lucky hit, you're going to get 100% increased chance to make enemies vulnerable. For the tempers, we're going to be running resource generation, and then we're going to be running critical strike damage. For the amulet, we're going to be running the Banished Lord's Talisman. The maximum life GA is definitely the most important, but your aspect on this is absolutely key. A difference between 30 and 60% is really big. So make sure you're looking for max life and then a really high aspect. After you spend 275 primary resources, which with the Spiritborn is actually 240, your next core skill is guaranteed to overpower. When you overpower and it critically strikes, which we will critically strike 100% of the time, your overpower is going to deal 60% increased damage. This is a huge source of our damage. Now we're going to cover the gems, the runes, and then the Spirit Hall choices. For the gems, you can figure out what you need. With the Spiritborn, because of how tanky they are, because of all of the stacks of resolve, because of all of the barrier generation, you don't need to be running max. This is enough right here if you feel uncomfortable running that. Move your Paragon board around a little bit. I'm running all diamonds. I'm almost capped out on my armor, so you can move the Paragon board around that if you want to hit that too. But if you put on one simple incense, I'm now armor capped. So diamonds are going to go into the jewelry, and then inside of your armor, you need to be running your amethyst for your barrier generation. This is going to get us to that cap. Now, as you saw, I'm very over, so I could replace this with emeralds, but that's just until I get gear fixed. So amethyst in your gear is what's going to be ideal. For your runes, we're going to be running Pak Q. What this is going to do, spending 300% of your maximum resource, you're going to invoke the Earthen Bulwark, which is a druid ability. It's going to grant a barrier. This is what makes getting to that 123% barrier bonus important. When you proc your Earthen Bulwark with 123% increased barrier bonus, this will give you a full barrier. For the other set of runes, they're going to be in your weapon. We're going to be running Tamzal. You do not have to run Tamzal. There are a couple different options. You do not have to run this, but anything that is going to make sure that you have 20% increased maximum life for 6 seconds will work for you. This is plenty of time. This procs once every about 3 seconds, so I don't really have to worry about it too much. If you don't have this rune, there's definitely options out there for you. For your Spirit Hall choices, this is changing a little bit from what we have been using because we're not running the Harmony of Ebawaka. We're going to be running Jaguar as your main, then Jaguar as your secondary. Why we're running Jaguar as our secondary? We're going to get 1 stack of ferocity whenever you kill an enemy or you damage a boss. The maximum ferocity is going to be increased by 1. The more ferocity we have with this specific build, the more damage we're going to be doing. It is incredibly important to stack ferocity to get the most damage out of this build. Okay, let's look at the mercenary choices. For the main mercenary, we're going to be running Rahir. The reason that we're running Rahir is very specifically for your shield charge. What this is going to do, and the most important part of this at the very bottom, physical damage and fortifying you for 5% of your maximum life. Fortify increases the damage of overpower by a lot. So having Rahir on your team and having shield charge on is a big boost to your damage. Not only that, we get 15% increased armor. Now you saw how low the armor was, so this is going to be a big help. And then eventually will give us a 15% increase X multiplicative damage. That's on a 25-second cooldown. We don't see it all too often. It only lasts for a couple seconds, but it is going to still be an increase for damage, but the shield charge is massive. Let's look at the gameplay loop. This is how you're going to run this character. I normally like to set this up with multiple training dummies, set it up for the boss dummies, and then we're going to do attacks as physical. When you're doing that, you need to make sure that your armor caps. So we're actually going to put on Song of the Mountain here. The bosses hit surprisingly hard with the training dummies. Now, what I mean by your rotation is basically no rotation. You're going to cast everything on cooldown. Remember, maximum life is going to be your damage, because overpowered damage, what it reads is that further increased based on your maximum life and your fortify amount. So we're going to put on your Elixir of Fortitude to make sure that we get more life. That's what we want to be running. There are also incense and stuff that you can use to increase your life even further. So that'll be how you min max. Now, as we start, we're going to just basically cast every single cooldown as fast as we can. Watch the vigor, because the vigor is going to go down and then back up and down and back up incredibly fast. That is Kepaleka going off. You want to make sure that every time that you see it flash, you don't see it stop right here. You see it get all the way back to full, because if you're not, you're losing out on some damage. Maybe not a lot, but it's definitely enough that if you're trying to min-max, get that 150 cleared this season, maybe not with Stinger, maybe you can. If you do it, post a link in the description of this video, because I would love to see a Stinger clear 150. Couple things to look at. This is your resolve stacks. This is your ferocity stacks. These are going to be what is going to be giving you some damage. When we start attacking, that ferocity, when we land inside of a mystic circle, is going to go up. Okay, so I did a little bit of pre-work. I let Rahir get up and running, make sure that I got my fortify all the way up. As he attacks, he gives you fortify. Your vigor. Watch this as we go. Remember, I don't have my resource generation here. I also don't have a GA here. This is where I'm going to have a little bit of damage loss, and you'll get to see it. So this is where having the right setup and the right build and the right gear, tempers, all comes into play. We're still going to do a lot of damage. We're still going to hit very hard, but working on those couple things are really going to help increase. So we're just going to start attacking. You just pop all of your cooldowns all at once. You know, if you watch my vigor, sometimes it goes right back up to full, and then very, very occasionally, it goes back up to half, and then it'll slowly regenerate back. So I'm losing a little bit of damage there. It is still hitting very, very hard. We're still doing trillions of damage when we're running into the pits. That is going to be your whole entire rotation. You just spam your keys. That white circle is your mystic circle, so make sure you're standing inside of that. But that is the rotation. That is the build. This is the Mystic Circle version of it. Hopefully, you guys enjoy it. Let me know in the comments what you think of the build. Let me know how you're running it and what you've done to improve it. I'm live every night. Stop by, Theorycraft with me. Say hi. Catch you on the clip side.